I'm speaking with Paul Banks, who is a prominent figure in the realm of social media content management and marketing, particularly known for his insights on leveraging platforms effectively like LinkedIn. He has established himself as an advocate for creating meaningful content that resonates with audiences rather than focusing solely on sales pitches. Currently, Paul is the founder of Javelin Content Management, where he helps businesses create top-notch video content. Recently, Javelin Content Management was shortlisted for the British Awards, Business Awards 2024 Startup of the Year Award. Congratulations, Paul.
Thanks. It's been an interesting 18 months.
So you've had quite a remarkable journey in content creation and social media strategy, especially with the success of Javelin Content Management. Could you start by sharing with our listeners which aha moments inspired you to focus on helping businesses move away from traditional marketing approaches and lean into more authentic, empathy-driven content strategies?
Yeah, of course. And I think there's a couple of moments that lead directly into that, right? So I was born in I'm gonna tell you my age, right? I was born in 1982. I'm not going to start right back there, but that's back in 1982, as Sir Ken Robinson was famed for saying, back in 1985, 1986, you couldn't elect to have ADHD, right? It wasn't a thing that anybody had. And so I went through my whole life doing things that seemed unusual to other people and thinking in ways that branded me a bit of a maverick, a bit of a geek, a bit of a nerd. And I always just assumed that that's just me. That's how I'm unique. And I guess it is, right? For 15 years in retail, I was kind of hammered a lot of the time for why do you not know these numbers? These numbers are important. You should know them. You should know them inside out. You should know them like the back of your hand, Paul. And for whatever reason, the numbers just would never stick. Yet I'd be able to remember things like my bank card number, just random things that kind of stuck in my head. And I always just lived with all of that. And about 3 years ago now, I was told by a friend of mine that I should get checked for ADHD. And he's like, I'm on this my friend was saying, look, I'm on the spectrum. I'm Asperger's, I'm on the line for autism. And you strike me as somebody that sits between neurodiverse and neurotypical. You strike me as being in that area. You seem to be able to translate what I'm saying. You get me when most people don't, but yet you yourself can be quite like me. And I was like, that's a really interesting statement to make. And I went away and I thought, you know what, like I don't really care about being officially labeled or assessed or diagnosed with something that I've lived with my whole life. I'm cool with it. But it would be interesting to know if that's why I do some of the things that I do. And so I went away and I did an online test. I paid a few pounds for it. It wasn't really an amazing quality test, but it was for my own peace of mind. And it came back and said, Paul, you're 53% likely to be ADHD. And I'm like, right, that's cool. I can live with this now. And I started looking since that point more and more into like I call them symptoms, right? Like the challenges and the superpowers that come with being an ADHD person. And the more I looked at these lists, the more I realized that the checks I could put in boxes were ever increasing. Like, oh, you could do that. I do that. I don't do that. No, I do that. I definitely do that. And I started to go on a bit of a journey to learn a bit more about who I am and why I choose to do the things that I do. Um, if I rewind back again to retail, I was always challenged with, Paul, where do you want to be in 10 years' time? What do you see yourself being? And I'd never really been able to pin down what I wanted to do as a job, as a career path. I just know what I enjoy doing and I want to do more of those things. So I've done a lot of different things. I'm a generalist, but I'm a specialist at being a generalist, right? And that's part of my superpowers. Fast forward again to the end of that time in retail, and I was well known for being a rebel. It comes with the territory. I struggle to follow rules and procedures unless they make sense. If you can explain one to me and it makes sense, then I will follow it and I will be the loyalist follower of that rule. But if you're just telling me to do something because that's the way we're doing things today, I can't do that. And I will rebel against it. So I found my way out of retail and I found my way into an AI startup. And all of a sudden, I've gone from stacking shelves with tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers, to working in a conversation analytics business, selling to contact centers and selling to enterprise size contact centers, C-suite. And it threw me because these are people that I've never really tried to communicate with before, that I wouldn't have dared communicate with in my old job. And turning up the heat a little bit on myself, I got into a few conversations with some CEOs and some big directors, and actually found that this was March 2020, so COVID's happened, right? We're all in our home offices for the first time. We're all on a level playing field. And actually, what I realized was these people that I'm talking to, that I'm so scared of, that I'm so reverent to, are just the same as me. They've just got a different job title. They've got a different skill set. They've got a different sort of experience, but they don't have my experience and they don't have my skill set. So we're equals. We just have a different job title. We earn a different wage. That's about it. And I discovered a bit of a deference to the job titles and who people are. And I start to take more of an interest in who people are and why they do what they do, and do they align with what they say they're going to do? Because for me, that became really important. And I'm trying to deliver sales for this startup. Like, I believe in the startup. Now, still at this day, I am good friends with all of the team that are there. I love them to bits, and I worshipped the CEO for having got me out of that retail environment and freed me, gave me, almost a carte blanche. And so I'm trying desperately to repay him. But the only way that I can see is what everybody else does, is to have more conversations at scale, because I know that I need to convert this many customers. To convert that many customers, I need to have this many leads in my funnel. To have that many leads in my funnel, I need to have this many prospects, and to go through them. And that's what everybody does. And it dawned on me that actually you don't. The sales pipeline was built on a false metric, which was you need to have this many prospects in the first place. And the moment you realize you can swap out volume for quality and curiosity, then you can change that funnel entirely. And instead of having to go for a volume of prospects, and which results in people trying to automate things, do things at high volume, like not personalizing things properly, not doing their research properly, when you realize that the alternative is a far better way of doing things, and the impact that that has on the funnel, then that also is true with networking, relationships, and life. And so that was kind of two of my big aha moments, was, understanding how my brain particularly works and processes things, and getting comfortable about it, getting the weight off my shoulders. But then also understanding that whilst you can go around, you can be an expert at cold outreach. You can be very good at it. You can be trained at it. You can spend a lot of years honing that craft. But for most people, that's not going to happen. Most people are just trying to get through. And if you're that sort of person, then you need to focus more on having genuine, honest conversations with people from a position of curiosity and adding value and servitude, not from a position of, I'm going to have this conversation, I'm going to get a sale at the end of it. That's great. Because people can smell that a mile off. And you create a self-fulfilling prophecy that you've gone into it with the intentions of creating a sale. They've smelled it on you and walked away. You've proved that this doesn't work. It's not true. You're just coming at it from the wrong angle. It's very hard to change that framing, but that's what people need to do.
I couldn't have said this better, because I'm a big proponent of conversations. And I want to delve a little bit further into what you're saying here. When you say conversations, I want you to actually define what you mean, because I think you mean a very specific way of communicating and conversing. And I suspect it's not just talking, it's actually really listening. And even when you're talking, how much of it is actually asking questions versus saying something?
It's interesting because it's something that I really have to fight when I'm having a conversation with people. As an ADHD person, I'm quite impulsive. So the moment something comes into my head, I have a desperate urge to say it, because I'm worried that if I don't say it right now, it's just going to leave my brain, and I'm going to spend the rest of the conversation wondering what it was that I was supposed to say to you, right? So it's a hard balance, and the more comfortable I get with speaking to people, the more free I am with interrupting them at the right times, and they're forgiving of me. I think you're right. Conversations, if you go back to communication as a whole, right? Not just conversations, but communication as a whole. What we're very good at is talking. We're very good at hearing what we want to hear. and the things that we're looking for. What we very rarely do, what we very rarely try to practice is active listening, is hearing what's not been said as much as what has been said. So for instance, I'm often talking to people who have just signed up with the business and then they maybe coming on board as clients. And I'll sit there and I'll just go, are you like I'm ADHD? I'm proud of it, right? So are you ADHD? Because some of the things you just said there kind of align with how I would think about things, which is good because I want to work with people who I align with. But it feels like that's very much a neurodiverse way of doing things. And I've had 4 clients go and get themselves assessed and come back positive, right? It's amazing what we don't see. I've got a big love for understanding behavioral science and why as humans we do some of the I don't know whether I'm allowed to swear on this show, but like some of the crazy, some of the batshit crazy things that we do as humans that should be a very logical approach. And we should go down, somebody says this, we should do this. And we don't. We go off on a tangent, we do this crazy thing over here all the time. And so few people understand the nuances of that behavioral science. I'm not an expert by any means. I know I love people who are because I can sit and listen to them for hours on end. But there are, specifically when I talk about conversations, I love being video. And I love being on video because, first up, you can't fake video. So much of that right now. Fake this, fake that, fake the other. Like sales bots writing messages. You can tell, but they're getting better. Well, I've had some half decent ones at least. It can write your posts for LinkedIn. It can write your articles for your newsletter. It can do all of these interesting things. And yeah, if you use it a lot, you can tell. But video, yes, you can create AI avatars, and there's been a lot of that in the news this week about are they realistic enough, and they're not. Being on video is the one thing that we still have that is organic, which shows us in the light that we want to be portrayed in. And when we talk about things that we're passionate about, we sparkle, we light up. It's easy to see when somebody has a passion for what they're doing and saying. So not only a big advocate for listening and hearing what's not been said as much as has been said, but for giving yourself the opportunity to get beyond your aversion to being on camera, your procrastination, your concerns and worries, and allowing yourself to showcase your credibility by telling a story, by having a conversation with people, by sharing your knowledge and expertise, not from the angle of sales, but from the angle of helping people. And I think that's the bit that a lot of people sidestep because it's uncomfortable.
But I think related to that is two things you mentioned earlier, and that's partly related to your ADHD. And that is, I think when you have these conversations, you're genuinely curious and keep staying curious until you hear something that's okay, that makes sense. I get it now. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. And for a long time, I said I had a good bullshit meter, right? And it turns out that's what it is, because if you can't satisfy my curiosity, then I have to question whether you're being genuine or not. And somebody who's really good and confident and capable with what they do displays that just genuine honesty and transparency. That's what that confidence does, And it's not to say that people who aren't confident aren't honest, like not at all. But the people who become confident what they talk about because they believe in it so much and they're so passionate about it, they talk about it all the time. You can instantly tell when somebody's doing that, and you align yourself with them and you liken yourself to them and believe them to be an expert, even if there isn't anything scientific to back that up. It's kind of, just you believe what I believe. And if you believe 90% of what I believe, you must be. If I perceive myself to be an expert, I perceive you also to be an expert. And then what's the interesting bit is when you challenge something that they believe, then once you've gotten to that expert stage and you then say, but this over here is wrong. We do it this way all the time, but actually there's a better way of doing it. Because then in my head, I've got cognitive dissonance. How can I believe you to be an expert, but have you disagree with something I believe? Either I'm wrong or you're wrong. And I need to figure out which one of the two is true. But then you come to it with an open mind because you've got that cognitive dissonance. Well, something's got to be wrong. So now I'm open to the conversation around it. And that's how we change people's beliefs and understandings and give ourselves an opportunity to create something that wasn't there before.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Basically, you're driving for a core truth, right? And until you kind of play this tennis match back and forth, you're not going to get there until you do that. But I think to clarify, when you say bullshit meter, it's not you're trying to gauge whether they're lying or not. You're actually trying to gauge the depth of their knowledge and expertise in this area, right? Do they just know it superficially because of what they read or is trendy or whatever, or do they actually know their stuff? Like, and I suspect you might do something I enjoy doing with some of my friends. That is, take the opposite point of view, even if you agree with them, just to get to a core truth.
It's fun. You can have a lot of fun with people, like even just mirroring. If we go back to the Chris Voss techniques, mirror someone and see what they come out with, because eventually you'll hit the depths of their knowledge. And like, I get it, fake it till you make it for a lot of people, right? Like, and I did that for the longest time. I did that, and you only get to be an expert by faking it until you've made it. But if that comes from a place of genuine desire to help people, even if you don't have that depth of knowledge and you get found out, people understand that you're coming to it for the right reasons. And I think that resonates more for me is what are your what is your reason for trying to do what you're doing? And if it's not genuine, if it's not, I guess, philanthropic, right? Like if it's not in the service of others, then it's disingenuous to me and I don't like it. I love working with people who are like me, who just, I have to say no sometimes, right? We've all got a limited amount of time in our day, but if I could give, and give, that's my business model. Is I just want to help people, and I know that, and I've experienced that that will come back in spades. And I think that's probably, we talk about aha moments, that networking aha moment when you realize that if you are brave enough to come to the conversation from a place of curiosity, no expectations, and how you can help someone, even if you feel like you've got nothing to give, right? And I felt that, like, when I first started networking, like I'm just a guy who spent 15 years in retail. I don't have services to offer. I don't have advice to give. I'm not, I'm no one. I'm no one. How am I going to help you? But realize that actually the connections that I was making were valuable. So I can connect you with people. That's valuable. That's going to start me off. And then you build on those strengths. But I think that aha moment paid me back. I trusted in the process. I went down the route. I networked with this person. They introduced me to two others. I introduced them to two others. I met those two other people. They introduced me to two others. Those are the two people introduced. And if I know I've got a diary full of meetings and I don't know whether any of them are going to be of any value to me. But if you chase the right rabbit long enough, and I'm not saying say yes to every networking conversation, it's not about that. You've got to be intentional. But if you follow it long enough and you come at it from the right angle, it will pay you back in absolute spades, and does so every single time. I laugh about it now because it's such a small world when you start connecting people.
I agree. You say you want to help people, but I'm going to actually clarify something. You tell me if I'm wrong. I actually think you want to help people, but ultimately you actually really love solving problems. And when you solve that problem, you know you're helping people. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love fixing broken things, helping people. And my why, which is another interesting moment as well. My why is to help people make better decisions for themselves. And that, that is so broad. When you look at it, it doesn't matter whether I'm talking to young people who are still at school and college and helping them with their career choices. Can they break out and become an entrepreneur? Should they go to university? All those sorts of things. I love those conversations. I love helping people with their career development and becoming leaders. I loved mentorship and coaching when I was a retail leader. And I've worked 10 years as a volunteer police officer, so helping people to decide to do the right thing sometimes, see the error of their ways by helping them make the decision that they're not going to do that again. Now and again, you get to make that impact. And then now it's, how can I help you do the right marketing? Whether it's with me, I go into conversations and half the time I can't even help people because they're not ready for me yet. It's like you need a brand, you need a logo, you need a website. I know all these people. I'm going to connect you to them. I'm going to help you. And eventually, one day you might come back to me. You might not, but you might also speak to some other people, and I'm first top of mind because I helped you. Not come back. So I definitely think like doing more with your why. I was frustrated with that start with why video for the longest time because I'm a doer. I get things done. And there is no actionable advice in that video whatsoever. As great as it is, there is no actionable advice. And then I found the Find Your Why workbook, audio book that accompanies that. And light bulb after light bulb after light bulb. And I thoroughly enjoyed going through that process, even solo, just on my own. So I'd advise anybody, if you don't know what your passion is or why you do what you do, go and go and read that Find Your Why book. It's the better of the two books, in my opinion.
Tell me a little bit about what you do at Javelin Content Management, but more specifically, I want to know what aha moment led to you this concept that you like to do, which is basically generate 4 weeks worth of content in 20 minutes. And how did you come to that? And tell me how that works, and maybe give some as examples of how it works in different industries or services.
Yeah, sure. So I've left retail, 15 years in corporate retail. I've done 10 years as a volunteer police officer. I've worked in a call center for a few months. I've tried to sell kitchens and failed miserably. So I've done a lot of different things in my life at this point, and I'm heading towards 40. Right, I've got a young son who was 4 at the time when I left retail, mortgage, or lots of pressures at home. And I've had a conversation with a guy on LinkedIn, and he was curious about me and curious about what I'd been doing. Cut a long story short, 6 weeks later, I joined the startup on a contract and thoroughly enjoyed it. But like I said before, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And I knew that I needed to have more conversations with the right people, because I do quite well in front of people once I'm on those conversations. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who are the same, right? When you get put in front of the right people that you need to have business conversations, you do all right. Getting to those conversations is really hard. And my audience that I was trying to reach were C-suite in contact centers. So the CEOs, founders, directors, SVPs, and I was talking with people at Macy's and Saks Fifth Avenue and Disney, and I was having a whale of a time. I was trying to find who I could impress the CEO with next as my next big conversation. But in my head, I'm also thinking, this isn't repeatable. I can't keep doing this forever. I need to have more conversations, and I need to get to more. And we hit on the idea that I've got half a dozen people in the business who have a LinkedIn account. All of our target audience are pretty much on LinkedIn, but they don't answer emails. They don't do cold outreach, quite rightly. And I was terrible at it also. They don't connect with people on LinkedIn necessarily, and I was terrible at that at the time as well. They don't answer their phones because they work in a call center, right? They work in a contact center. They know the game. Their people are doing it as well. So they're not answering phones. How the hell do you reach them? And a lot of people then come back and go, oh, well, they're not on LinkedIn, because they don't ever comment on any of my stuff or anything. So I know they're not on LinkedIn. My audience aren't there. And we asked the question, what if we could create what I call the pufferfish effect? How can we make our business look bigger than what it actually is, and more responsible, more mature, more professional, so that people come to us and we attract them inbound like a magnet, rather than us having to go outbound to them? And so we started to do a podcast once a week with the CEO, and I started doing live streams once a week with like industry influencers and celebrities, and it was really fun. We had a ton of fun with it. There was a lot of anxiety for me at the beginning. Like when you hit that record button, there's a lot of like sweating buckets, and I'm hyperventilating. It's really, when you first start getting used to controlling that emotion, when you press that record button, it's hard work. But what we realized was we could turn that 30 minutes of video into clips, right? Nobody's going to come along and watch your podcast. Nobody's got time for it anymore, right? If they are watching a podcast, they're looking at Stephen Bartlett's podcast, right? They're not looking at my podcast. They don't have the time for 30 minutes, but they might have time for 2 or 3 minutes. So we said, like, what if we could split up a 30-minute video into 2 to 3 minute clips? That's great. Okay. And then I spent 20 hours a week editing videos, because I'm ADHD. I can't deal with watching videos and editing them. By the time I come to the end of the clip, the neighbors are here. Like, it just doesn't work. And it was really, really painful editing these videos. I'm like, it's the right end result. We need to get to these clips that I can put out across everybody's social media, because it's having the right impacts. We're having conversations with people. People starting to become aware of us and trust us. But it needs to be far more efficient, because I've got, I'm solutions consultant. I'm doing 90-minute demos. I'm handling the whole CRM. I'm building relationships, managing ongoing leads. I'm joining calls. I'm working with customer success. I'm delivering scope of works. I've got all these other things to do, and it's taken me half of my week just to do LinkedIn content. And then we hit on some tools that were just kind of starting to come out at the time. And one of these is Descript. And what it effectively does is it will take a video like this and turn it into a transcript. So you've still got the video alongside. You've got like a Microsoft Word document that you can edit. And as you edit those words, it edits the video and audio alongside it, which for me as an ADHD, I was like, this is gold dust. This is great. So that cut my time down considerably. And then over time, they were invested in by OpenAI. So they've brought AI into the platform, which makes it even more efficient. So you can do lots of things within it. And I, bit by bit, put together a third-party toolkit. I combine, like, one of my things I love to do is combine technologies, make them work together. So we're putting things together all the time. And I'm always on the lookout for how to help the business to stand out in the LinkedIn feed, because everybody puts out the same stuff on LinkedIn. It all looks boring. It's all just merges into one. None of it's exciting. So can we pull out quotes from the video, right? And everybody puts them on images, right? And I was like, well, can we animate them? Can we animate the words onto the image? And then at least it's different from what everybody else is doing. And can we do it with a bright yellow background instead of this boring gray that everybody uses? And all of a sudden, I was the guy with the yellow background, right? Because I edited my profile picture and put a yellow background. I was one of the first people to do that colored background. And cut long story short, we delivered a hell of a pipeline using video content and making it more efficient so I could get on with the rest of my week. So the upshot of what all that means is now what I offer to my clients is I work with usually executive coaches, CEOs, or kind of consultants who've stepped out of the corporate world and are launching their own consultancy. And we help them create brand awareness, create a presence on usually LinkedIn's it's my go-to, but YouTube as well. And we take 20 minutes worth of video with them, turn it into 15 to 20 micro moments from that clip. But we then output that in a couple of different color schemes. So maybe a high contrast and low contrast color scheme, depending on where they're putting it. We do it in portrait, landscape, and square formats. So no matter where they want to put the content, they can distribute it there. But then we do other things like, can we make it an audiogram where it's kind of just like a picture of the person with the words animating on the screen in a waveform? It's a little bit different. Not a lot of people are doing that well. So, when we set up the templates and we do that manually, that looks really smart and effective. Again, landscape, portrait, square, a couple of different color formats. And we do the quotes images. Again, we do them in landscape and square. So whatever type you want to put them out, again, in a couple of different color schemes. And you can see how it becomes a huge amount of content from what is essentially just a 20-minute chat. And it means that the most time-poor person in the business, who is your best salesperson by far, which is your senior leader, are effectively leveraging that time to multiply it across LinkedIn. And I can leverage that as a junior salesperson or as somebody who's less senior in the business. He is my CEO, who's very credible in this industry, talking about this topic. Here's my thought on that. So I'm starting to then inject myself into that. And so it's a great tool for whether you're an individual who wants to just be more well thought of in the industry, top of mind awareness, or you're a bigger size business and you've got salespeople who are struggling to make those connections, and you think that the answer is to go out and blast people into oblivion with spam. There is another option. And if you're smart enough to do it and you can do it consistently over a period of time, it builds trust, builds awareness. And the last bit of this story that I'll come to is we were at a conference about a year and a half into this process. And there was 9 of us there. I popped to the loo, which was about half a mile away because it was a huge conference center. And I came back with a cup of coffee and my CEO was furious with me. He's like tongue in cheek, but he was furious. He's like, why did you choose now to go to the toilet? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, that CEO for that, I'll not name names, but that well-known brand that we were chasing. I'm like, yeah. Oh, well, he's just been over to the stand, but he wouldn't talk to me. He wanted to know where the Banksy of LinkedIn was. Oh, is he coming back? He's like, probably not, because you weren't here. But you know what he said? And I was like, no, what did he say? He said, well, where's everyone else for the business? Are they not here? And he says, I said, well, this is us. There's like 9 of us and Paul's at the toilet. Like, no, but the rest of your business, because we know you're a big business. He's like, no, there's only 9 of us. Oh, we thought you were right. Oh, okay. Oh, that's cool. And so it kind of proves the point. Look, this is a really tight niche audience, really super hard sales process, $1 million a year plus in revenue for each sale. And I had 200 plus conversations in the funnel when I left the business. It's like it's ridiculously. I wouldn't say it's easy. It's hard to get right. You've got to get your messaging right. You've got to know your audience. But fundamentally, all I'm doing is having a one-to-one conversation, but one to many because I'm putting it out on social media, and that was the transformer for that business. So and there isn't that I've come across, there isn't a business that can't benefit from that service, right? In the B2B world. B2C is a little different. B2C is quite tough in that respect, but B2B, I hear still people say all the time, my audience aren't on LinkedIn. Like, I've never yet had a client in the last 2 years who have commented, shared, or liked a single post I've put out before they've become a client. But they found me anyway. And 95% of what I deliver comes inbound to me. I don't have to go outbound for it. First up, done is better than perfect. So people spend their entire lives around video worrying about, is this exactly right? And should I have clicked it this word earlier? Or should it have this special effect on the end, right? And what I say to people is getting it out there in the wild is better than worrying about how perfect it is. So people love organic, they love honest, and they love transparent. If there's a mistake on there, own it, laugh about it, but get it out there. So that's mistake number one. Mistake number two is trying to cut something up that loses context. So I've now kind of trained myself to talk in almost 60-second points a lot of the time so that it's easy to clip up. And I've changed my accent, not on purpose. I've changed my accent when I get on video. I have like what I call a posh phone voice on video because I know it transcribes better. And I know the words that it mistranscribes all the time for my accent. When you start to do 2 to 3 minute videos, they're very hard to break up into 1 minute videos because you're telling a story. It's a very short, succinct point. 2 to 3 minutes. If you're going to do a 2 to 3 minute video, leave it as a 2 to 3 minute video. You can only get down to 1 minute videos if you're talking at like 10 minutes at a time plus, or you've completely scripted the video, which is awful for LinkedIn. It might work on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram and stuff, but it doesn't work on LinkedIn. People can tell it's a sales pitch. Which is what it usually, or there's nothing of substance to it, which is the other thing I hear. Make sure your clip has something in it that will benefit the people who are listening. And if it's not immediately obvious from the video, call it out in the copy. So, the copy is very, very important to go alongside your video to say, well, we talked about this here, but actually the important bit is this bit in the middle. And I want you to think about that and just remember to ask them to do something with that. Whether it's comment, whether it's like, whether it's share the post or get in touch or go to your website or go to your YouTube. Ask them to do one thing, just one. Don't overcomplicate it. Keep it simple. And I think if you practice those with a focus on being a bit different, not copying other people, just being you, then you can't go too far wrong.
Interesting. So are you doing most of these on LinkedIn, or do you also do other social channels as well with these clips?
So we produce them in a format where it doesn't matter which social media platform you're interested in working on. You've got content there ready to go on it. The last thing I want is people coming back to me 3 months down the line and trying to pay me for extra work for the video that I did from 6 months ago. I don't want to do that. I just want to give you it back and we move on to a new topic, a new video project or whatever. So they've got that there. My expertise is more around LinkedIn and YouTube. And I love YouTube because one, it's the world's second biggest search engine, right? Like people say this all the time, but nobody really takes in what that means. If you're on there, it's like putting drips of water into a puddle, right? So you're dropping water on the floor and that puddle's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And in a day, you won't notice that puddle getting any bigger whatsoever. In a week, you might see a little bit of difference. Come back in a year, if you're dropping drops of water onto that puddle every day, you'll see it's massive, right? And that's what YouTube is. It's surface area for your brand. And you can, more to the point, unlike LinkedIn, where you kind of post something up and then it's gone, and it depends where somebody starts watching your posts as to what they see and how you come across. With YouTube, you can tell a story. This is my ideal customer. And when they come to me, they're probably worried about this. And I can answer that for them and then take them on a journey down this playlist. And then when they graduate from that playlist, I'll move them onto this playlist and that'll help them understand how I solve their challenges. And they go down this playlist. And that's quite unique in the world of social media. That being said, I do believe that if you're willing to invest time and effort into it, I do believe that people underestimate the power of TikTok, particularly. I know it's quite a challenging subject in the US at the moment, but I know lots of professionals, consultants, coaches who are on TikTok who don't get massive numbers of followers or viewers, but do manage to drive plenty of business from it. So my advice would be don't dismiss anything that you don't already work on, but don't try and do too much at once. Get good at what you're comfortable with and then spread out bit by bit.
Are these the same clips, or do you alter them for TikTok, YouTube, and stuff as well? Are there specific things you change?
More just the format and layout. And what I say to people is, look, you've got 15 to 20 clips here. If you post 3 times a week on LinkedIn, you're still only going to get 12 clips out in a month. You've got 8 clips there that you've never used. But aside from that, only 10% of your audience ever see any single post. Plus, your following on YouTube is likely to be very different than what it is on LinkedIn. And your followers on another social media platform would be different again. The likelihood is, as well, with behavioral science being what it is, if you change things enough in terms of a visual layout, people won't even realize it's the same post. So I did this with my old CEO's posts, right? He used to get some white label comedy written, and it was actually really, really good. And he was a former comedian himself, so he was quite good at writing it as well. And one of the posts was about here in the UK when I was a kid, used to get like a red record of achievement folder, and you put all your certificates from high school and everything in there, and keep that. The idea being that you gave it to an employer when you were getting a job, and they would accept that, and brilliant. And there was some sort of joke around, I get this out once every 15 years to admire the fact that I've never used it in a job interview ever because nobody even has asked for it. Contrary to what we were all told when we were kids. And it used to go down a storm in the UK, right? Like everybody would comment on it and laugh about it and get photos of their own and post it on there. And 6 months later, I posted the same post up again to see what reaction it would get. And it got more likes and views the second time round than it did the first time. I repeated this process 5 times in a year, and each time it got better results. And ironically, the comments came from some of the same people. So, the only person that gets bored of your content is you. That being said, you do need to keep your topics reasonably fresh, because otherwise you're not taking people down the conversion funnel. You're not helping people move from, I know who you are, to I know why I should work with you. So definitely consider new topics. But in terms of reusing those clips, honestly, you could probably dig them back out in 6 months and use them again, and nobody would even realize.
So, what are you seeing in terms of the difference using the strategies you've been talking about when it comes to engagement? How are you seeing the level of engagement be different?
I think it's interesting. Like I've got a bit of a bugbear with engagement, in that, kind of like I said before, like none of my clients who've ever purchased from me have engaged with my content. So I think that there's a big artificial focus on engagement as the all-encompassing metric, and it's not to say that it's not important. It absolutely is important because it helps you reach, it helps you get more views, get in front of more people. But honestly, I could care less whether my video gets 200 views or 10,000 views, as long as the demographics that sit behind that are right. So if you go into LinkedIn, you can drill down into your analytics behind the video, behind the post, and you look at the job titles of the people who are viewing your content. And they've brought in this terrible metric at the moment called impressions, right? Don't be fooled by impressions. It's here to make you feel better about your posts. It's just the fact that you've entered somebody's feed, not that they've even looked at your posts. So get rid of impressions. Like LinkedIn, do away with it, please. Views are more important because they show you who's actually spent time looking at your post. And for me, I released a video a couple of weeks back and it got 243 views, right? Which somebody who's got 20,000 followers, like that's a bit of a kick in the teeth, right? Like 200 views, seriously? And I looked at the analytics behind it. The demographics were something like the top 43% were all my ideal job title clients, right? So that means I've had 100 plus people watch my post who I would like to convert into clients. Where else can you go and spend money? Where else can you go? Never mind spending money to get that sort of access to your ideal audience. So we get blown up over engagement and click-throughs and impressions and all these things. But honestly, take it back a step and think about, are you accessing the right sort of people with the content? Because if you are, then that's all that matters. What's dangerous is when people make content to get likes and comments and engagement, and that drives growth of your network, which is fine, drives growth of your audience, gets you more views. But from who? Because what a lot of people do is they're making content to suit their champions and people who like them. They're not going to pay your bills. So make content for the people you want to reach and let them find you, as opposed to worrying about likes and engagement. That's my little rant on. So to answer your question, I break the rules right on LinkedIn. So you're supposed to post once a day and you're supposed to post a few times a week. And I think I posted 21 posts last week. Right. So, but I can guarantee, and I've done the research to back this up. If I post once a day for 5 days that week and added up all my views, it's substantially less than what I get from 21 posts. I'm not saying everybody has 21 posts to get out of the system. I could probably double that and still be frustrated that I can't say everything I want to say. So like I still have to reel myself back a bit, but that's the important thing for me, is be true to yourself and who you want to reach, and make sure your messaging's right. And it will come your way if you're consistent.
So what area in the future do you want to delve into further with some of these strategies? Are there new strategies you're looking at that you want to test and play with? And if so, what are they?
I think what will be really interesting is when we get to the point where, so like I was playing about with Notebook LM the other week, and I saw the outputs of it analyzing a PDF and explaining that to people in a podcast style. And the quality of natural sound and timbre in those voices was absolutely unreal. And that really blew me away. And I can think of a million use cases for that already. Especially if you're a tech business who struggles to tell people what it is that your platform does. Do I think that it's a case of just posting it out and letting people listen to it, or pretending it's an actual podcast? No. But there are some amazing opportunities coming down the line alongside things like augmented reality, right? We've been hovering around this for a long time now. I feel like it's almost reaching maturity. Like, how can you combine augmented reality, people popping up in your glasses as you're talking, like, a headshot of me talking and saying something. There are so many exciting ways of using technology, but the most dangerous thing that I've ever heard anybody say is, well, we've always done it that way. Those are the sorts of people that AI is going to kill off. It's going to kill those people off, because 3 years ago you couldn't be employed for $500,000 a year as a prompt engineer, somebody who looks after prompts going into a large language model, right, and make sure that it does what it's supposed to do. And it's a unique skill set of being maybe a salesperson who really understands sales and how to write messages that really convert people, and data and programming and coding. And putting those two together creates a whole new opportunity for people to move forward. So honestly, I think that there are so many opportunities coming, like personal AIs, like, can you help advise me on my business? Here's my business. And we can already, to a certain extent, do that, but to the point where we can walk around and talk to that AI as we're walking about and get feedback and things whispering in our ear. You said that last time, but he lied about it. There's so many exciting things coming.
It's interesting what you said about people. So we've always done it this way, right? But those are the same people often are the biggest worries about their competitors. And what they haven't realized is you're actually better off being your own worst competitor than worrying about your competitors.
That's it. Because you've copied them. You've become your competition.
Yeah. And well, even more importantly, you can't control them, but you can control you. At least half the time, not all the whole time, right? And that's, if you become your biggest competitor, sure, you may end up cannibalizing yourself, but you may actually, grow tremendously because you're solving another problem, or really delving into something further that no one else is doing yet.
Yeah, it's something that I've realized along with the ADHD diagnosis, right, is be you, but be you magnified. And that's kind of what you need to not, be larger than life. And if you take that approach to things and you're leaning into things that make you uncomfortable, know that, things like video, for example, people procrastinate on it all the time. Oh, I know I need to do it, but or I haven't booked it in, and oh, I don't feel up to it. I haven't got the energy, or we haven't created a strategy for it. Strategy is a great one. How did you get where you are? Oh, well, let me tell, right, let me hit record. If it feels uncomfortable to do, then it's worth doing it, is my message. Lean into that, do it, because if you don't, your competition will, and they'll beat you to the post. So do it before they do. And that's my big thing around, if I look at my jobs list and there's something that's been sat there for a couple of days, I have to make a decision. Is it there because it makes me uncomfortable, or is it there because actually I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze? And if it's the first one, get it done.
Well, you actually mentioned this earlier, and this is something maybe worth repeating, is that a lot of times success in business is not that you get it perfect, is that you get it out fast.
Yeah, and iterate on it, learn from it. If it wasn't perfect, what could you do next time to make it a little bit better? Um, the other thing is, if you are going to make content, especially video, make it about something that you enjoy talking about, as opposed to what you think your audience want to hear. Because one, you'll be able to tell because you'll be dry as sticks and not really enjoy it, not engaging with it. But two, eventually you'll stop doing it because it's not fun. It's got to be fun. Take away the being on video element, because nobody likes being on video. It's not natural.
So I usually ask my guests the last question, who would you like to have lunch or dinner with and why? But I'm going to modify this for you. You can answer that, or you can also answer who would you love to videotape and why?
Gone too soon, but not by too far for me to be able to talk to them, was Sir Ken Robinson, born in the Liverpool Docklands, very much a working class family, and grew up to not only have a PhD but to fight for the betterment of education across the world, and but never lost his sense of humor during the whole time, and was one of the best on stage performers I've ever seen. So everybody's watched some of his TED talks, right? And I've read all of his books, and I'm super passionate about schooling and our next generation, and helping our kids learn from the mistakes and that we've made, and get away from the boring education system that we seem to think is relevant to them these days. But I would love to get under the skin of what drove that transformation with him, and just be able to have that conversation. But to your point, be able to have that on video, because he was a natural entertainer. Um, Changed so much in the world, but still had so much more work to do. I think he was in his early 50s when he passed away a few years back. Had so much more left to do in the world, and the life and times of Sir Ken Robinson would have made a fantastic documentary, that just one of those things that just never got made. So yeah, that's where I'd have gone with it. It's fantastic personality.
Interesting. It's funny you mentioned education because earlier when we were talking, I know one of your passions is to solve problems, but I could tell your other passion is education, but specifically, you really like teaching people how to think.
We're too stuck in our ways, and when you see that light bulb moment with someone, when you've made them question why they do what they do, why have we got this rule? What purpose does it serve? Does it make us faster, more efficient, make more money? Does it? Oh, we've just always done it that way. Uh-huh. So go on. Then what? All right. Okay. Oh, we could do it this other. Yes, we could, and we should. More at the point. And yeah, so whether it's kids, and I've got a 6-year-old son and a 1-year-old, and it's all about helping him understand why what he's done is the right thing or the wrong thing. It doesn't matter what he's done. It doesn't matter what mistakes he's made. Just learn from your mistakes. Careers at school, how are we advising children to do what they need to do? Why is it about a job title, not about what they enjoy doing? And how do we help them identify what it is that they enjoy doing, instead of focusing on that job title that they should have when they're older? But you're ultimately right. How do you help them see that? Because it's not me that comes up with the answers. It's always the other person.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy teaching. I actually teach part of my time I devote to teaching, and I've done it. I've enjoyed it. But when I'm doing that, my goal is to try to get them to think because I've seen it does two things. One, it builds their confidence, but two, they are confident enough that they know they can solve the problem. They're not worried about what's thrown at them. They know that if they can just think, they can solve most problems, if not all.
It's that creativity that we seem to drum out of kids as they get older. That creativity to solve the problem, and Not even think outside the box. Just forget that the box exists. Look at what Elon Musk has achieved. Whether you like the guy or you don't, right? He doesn't believe in a box in the slightest.
It's a simple problem, but it may be a big problem, but or a grand problem. But ultimately, it's a problem he's trying to solve.
Yeah, we need to live on Mars. How do we get there? It's not a case of is it possible or do we have the technology to do it? It's just how do we get there? Like, what do I need to do first? Right, okay, let's do this. And like, you can take a lot of negative lessons from the guy, but few people have managed to achieve the things that he's achieved, and he does it because he doesn't believe in being limited or boxed in, or a belief that if you want to do something, you can do it. You just need to find out how.
It's been a great pleasure talking to you. I've enjoyed this episode. I'm sure we could probably go on for another hour or two. And in fact, I think we should revisit this maybe later on and do another episode. But I appreciate you sharing your stories and your wisdom today. And I actually learned quite a bit. I had a few aha moments myself, and so I appreciate that.
No, thank you for having me along, Darshan. And yeah, just every opportunity I can to just help people do the same. That's what we should all be doing for each other, is just working to improve each other's lives. However that is, sharing of experience and story. It's fantastic fun.
Yeah, and that's what all of us have these aha moments that I think we can all learn and grow from, and that's part of my motivation to do this, is to talk about people's aha moments, to help all of us to learn and be inspired to pursue our own aha moments. So thanks again, Paul.
Thank you.
Getting to AHA was brought to you by iResearch. To find out more about us, head to iResearch.com. And make sure to search for Getting to AHA in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else podcasts are found. And don't forget to click follow to ensure you don't miss any future episodes. Thank you for listening.